Oh, I was watching Purdue and lost track of time. I pulled out the game film from last year and watched it last night. And, they're just so similar because they have, four starters and, they know what they want out of every possession offensively and defensively. We had a heck of a game with them last year. Nate had 6 block shots, TJ Bamba guarding his tail off. Brandon got off to a good start, but then got into foul trouble. But, just watching them, just their experience, their toughness. Matt does such a great job with them. They're just – last year we had a heck of a game with them as a defensive battle, but this year, the personnel are so much different for us. I just trying to figure out a way to slow them down. We did a good job slowing them down last year. We had a little trouble scoring ourselves.
And Dana, when you zoom out, I guess, on these last few weeks, how much do you feel like you can attribute it to the major, obviously, injuries that you guys have faced, or maybe other factors that are going on for you guys?
Well, anything I say here makes it sound like excuses. We got off to a bad start before the season when Jackson broke his hand, and I didn't feel like we made the progress we needed to. And then Jackson was really our only experienced guard, that we had, and that's probably my fault for not backing us up more, on the experience level with guards. But part of it's the schedule. We come off the road, and then we play a really good Nebraska team, Michigan State. I think all in the top 10. That's not good to play without Nate. Our only experienced inside player. So, again, those are the 2 guys, along with KJ, that we knew had to play well for us, just from experience of what we lost and what we were able to get out of the portal, buy out of the portal, whatever you want to call it. We knew we had to have those 3 guys on the floor all the time for experience. And, we haven't had a conference game when we've had them, all 3 of them on the floor. So, it hasn't been good. And, we're hoping to get Nate back. He practiced a little bit yesterday. I don't know if he'll be able to go this weekend or not. But we obviously need him, for an inside presence, inside scoring. If you look at points in the paint the other night, we got killed both from a defensive standpoint and an offensive standpoint. We didn't score enough in there, and we gave up 44 in the paint. So obviously Nate's impact, I'm watching the game last year, as I mentioned, with Purdue, and he had 6 block shots in that game. And we didn't have any block shots the other night. So, it's, tough without the 3 experienced guys that we were counting on. Now, to KJ's credit, he's battled his tail off. Without the other 2 guys, he's battled his tail off. But again, just trying to get any rotation. Big E's done for the year now. He was just starting to play good, giving us some minutes, making the transformation after getting here late. Just when school started, he was trying to, picking up some things and how we wanted to play. I thought he had played better, and, he hurt his shoulder and had shoulder surgery on Monday, and obviously he's done for the year. And, Dev was a starter at the beginning of the year. He struggled with the groin. He's going to be out for a few weeks now again, which has kept him in and out of the lineup. And, again, the experience factor. So, like I said, it's a long answer. There's no easy answer for it. But the injuries have hurt our development as a team all the way from the start of the season. I don't know how many different starting lineups we've had, and how many games guys have missed, but we've just never been able to, get 7 or 8 guys that we can count on for a rotation and get some things working. The other night I looked after the game, and Luke and Drew, who have worked their tails off, had played a lot of minutes. FA, we threw him out there for a few minutes. Jamari, Way, just a lot of new faces that didn't play any minutes for us last year, and haven't played many minutes in the States. So it's not ideal, but we just got to keep plugging. We got a third of our season left. We got to figure out a way to put some things together and hopefully get Nathan back to give us some stability in the post, and make, win a few ball games, have the guys get their heads up a little bit and have a little fun here.
You mentioned on Sunday that those new guys, lack of experience guys, this week was an important week for them with no games, a lot of practice. What's kind of the focus you would expect from them this week to get out of it?
Well, we spent a lot of time yesterday defensively, just going over, things that are fundamentally that we've got to do better. Things that often to the ball, man and ball, just we're making fundamental mistakes that a good basketball team, an experienced basketball team wouldn't make. And so we spent all day yesterday on that. We'll spend a lot of time again defensively today. I know we've got to score more points, but, defensively we can get some of those things corrected earlier. That's just effort, thought, often to the ball. Just, I think we can get some of those things corrected earlier than, offense just takes more time. And, we're going to have to hit some shots. We did have some good looks the other day, but we're not shooting it with a lot of confidence. And I can understand that. You lose ball games and you don't play with confidence. Like I said, I mentioned watching that game with Purdue. We were 15-2, and our guys were flying around like they knew what they were doing. So your whole mindset changes. And our guys aren't used to being here. The guys that have been with us, KJ, he's not used to being here. Nate, been with us 5 years. Those guys, it's hard on them because they're not used to being in this situation.
Purdue plays a little bit more in the half court. You mentioned last week against UCLA that plays a little bit faster. That controlling the tempo, especially for a shorthanded team, is important. How does that differ for a team that plays a little bit slower and more in the half court?
Well, Iowa did that too. In the first half, I thought we were okay. Purdue, they just beat you up. They're old, they're physical. I mentioned the 4 guys back, and then they added a fifth-year senior in Clough. So they're old and experienced. So they can beat you in a lot of different ways. You do have to stop their transition because they're very effective. They don't run a lot, but they're very effective when they do run. So you still got to get back and put your defense together. But no, they create a lot of problems. Smith is, just talented, experienced. He made the critical plays last year that got us, and he makes a lot of critical plays for his team. But no, they're a handful in every regard. If you look at their percentages, and I think they're 51% overall and 38 from the line, 38 from 3, and shoot a good percentage from the free throws. So again, they're efficient offensively in every category.
You're obviously someone who's had a lot of success over your years here. How much has this year and all of the external factors in college sports in general weighed on you and made you think even about your potential future in the game?
It's been 31 years since we had a year like this. My first year at Creighton. So it's different, but the guys are good. I feel bad for the guys. I've gotten to do this 46 years. Nate's came back, his 5th year. to have a great year, and he's been banged up all year. Sprains his ankle bad the first half of the San Diego State game. I mean, we're talking back in November. And, fights his tail off to come back from that. Sprains his ankle in the first half of the Nebraska game. And now has fought the last 3 weeks to try to come back from that. So you feel for guys like that, who could have went anywhere, made more money, all that, and he stayed with us because, his family and him wanted him to be here. So when it doesn't go smooth for him, KJ came back, and to see his running mate, Jackson, those two guys have spent a lot of time together. They came in as freshmen, and, so, I feel bad for Jackson not being able to play. So those three guys came back, and, I told him when we brought him back that we were going to build everything around him. And sounded like a good plan at the time. And so they were capable of doing that if we'd have stayed healthy. And it's my fault for not backing it up with more experience. That's on me. And so I feel really bad about that for those guys. But, it doesn't change. You do this as long as there's always ups and downs. This is a big down, but, I still like coaching, still want to coach. I still enjoy going to the gym every day. Got a great staff. So, no, doesn't change how I feel about it. So.